President, I have an amendment that I introduced yesterday, filed at the desk, and I have some modifications to that amendment at the desk, and I would ask unanimous consent that the amendment be so modified.
Is there objection? Without objection, the amendment is so modified.
I would also like to ask unanimous consent, Mr. President, that Senators Bennett and Roberts be added as co-sponsors.
Without objection.
Mr. President, yesterday one of my colleagues criticized me for trying to redirect unspent stimulus funding to pay for tax relief for small businesses by citing all the jobs that the stimulus bill has supposedly created. Now, I, like many people, have my doubts about some of these estimates, but I can guarantee you this much, that none of these jobs have been created or saved by the unspent funds. There's a lot of money in the stimulus bill that is yet to be spent. According to recovery.org, which is the administration's website, about 38% of the money, the stimulus money that was approved last year out of that $1 trillion amount, round numbers, has been spent. So there's a lot of unspent and unobligated money. And frankly, many of us at the time that passed last year suggested that it would be a much wiser use of those funds if we directed those toward small businesses. The small businesses are the creators of jobs in our economy. They create 2/3 of the jobs. They are the economic engine that drives the economy in this country. And ironically, less than 1% of that $1 trillion that was approved last year in stimulus funding was directed at incentives for small businesses to create jobs. We put money into all kinds of other things, Mr. President, all kinds of other things which to date have shown little evidence that any jobs have been created. Now, it seems to me at least that the argument that was made at the time by many of us was that allowing or creating more of these incentives, putting more policies in place that would incentivize small businesses to create jobs would have been a much better use of stimulus money. Now, what my amendment does, very simply, is says that of those unspent, unobligated funds, and that universe of funds, Mr. President, represents about $160 billion that has been not only not spent, but not obligated, that we use some of those funds to do what we should have done in the first place, and that is to create incentives for small businesses to hire new people, to put people back to work, and to make capital investments. So I guess the only thing I would say is I would take issue with what was said on the floor here yesterday, that somehow my amendment was going to cut the Economic Recovery Act short. It doesn't do that at all. In fact, what this does is simply says that those funds that have not been spent, not been obligated in the stimulus bill that was passed last year be redirected toward these particular provisions that will provide incentives for small businesses to create jobs. And just very simply, what are those? Extends by 1 year the bonus depreciation that allows small businesses to accelerate the way that they write off equipment purchases, accelerated depreciation schedule so they can take more of that cost up front as a deduction. It also makes permanent the Section 179 deduction and increases that as well so that small businesses are able to expense more of those types of investments. Again, an incentive for them to invest more, hopefully to create jobs. It eliminates the capital gains tax on investment in small businesses. And by the way, that is something that the President in his State of the Union speech came out in support of. So this is something that the White House has already endorsed. And finally, it provides for a 20% deduction for small businesses against their income. Now, why is that necessary? Many small businesses, and in fact, half of small business income, we're told, when tax rates go up next year, would be subject to that higher tax. So if a small business that passes through their income into their individual tax return is currently paying at the 33% tax rate, they're going to see that tax rate go up to 36% of that income. If they're currently paying at the 35% tax rate, they're going to see their tax rate go up to 39.6% starting next year in 2011. So this allows them to take a 20% deduction against their income that will help in some ways limit or mitigate the impact of the higher tax rates that they will be subject to beginning in 2011. And so, again, I think it's a fairly straightforward amendment, Mr. President, and I would simply argue again to my colleagues that it makes sense for us, in my view, to be making investments, be putting policies in place that will incentivize job creation in this country. And that job creation, again, occurs in the private economy, with small businesses. Small businesses, we're told, create 2/3 of the jobs in our economy. And in fact, about half of the people in this country that work, they're employed currently, work for small businesses, so they have a tremendous impact on our economic well-being, on job creation. And it's important, in my view, that we be taking steps here that will add to the ability of our small businesses to get out there and do what they do best, and that is to make investments, to create jobs. And again, I would take issue with what was said yesterday regarding this amendment, that it would somehow cut short the Economic Recovery Act. It doesn't do that at all, because these are not funds that have currently been spent, nor are they funds that have been currently obligated. These are funds that are unspent, unobligated, out of the $1 trillion bill that was passed last year, which, as we all know, to date has not created the jobs that was promised. In fact, since the bill passed last year, we've lost 2.7 million jobs in our economy. And I think, frankly, one of the reasons for that is it was misdirected in the first place. We should have been focused on job number one, and that is helping those job creators in our economy, which are small businesses. I want to point out, Mr. President, that the National Federation of Independent Business, which is the largest trade organization representing small businesses in this country, or at least the largest small business advocacy organization, has written a letter in support of my amendment, and I want to read one paragraph from that. It says, "The Thune Amendment is a necessary step in helping to provide more certainty to small businesses about their future tax liability, whether to make long-term capital expenditures and hire more workers. We hope this amendment will provide momentum to clear other obstacles in the path to job creation." And so, Mr. President, I guess what I would say, by way of closing, is that although there is a great debate here about how best to create jobs, I think we can all agree that the $1 trillion stimulus bill that passed last year a lot of that has not been spent. The argument that it would be timely, targeted, and temporary, I think all of those criteria have not been met. And more importantly, the ultimate metric by which I think we judge whether it's been a success or not has not been met either, and that is job creation. If you look at the economy today, unemployment stands at 9.7%. The commitment that was made at the time the bill was passed a year ago was that if we pass this stimulus bill, we will hold unemployment below 8%. We all know that it's well past that, and if you look again at the job numbers and the number of people in this country that are still looking for work, still struggling with a loss of income, the best thing that we can do is to get them back to work, and the best way to do that isn't to create jobs here in Washington, D.C. or invest in government programs. It's frankly to get the small businesses in our economy, the creators of jobs, the engine that drives this economy forward, liberated in a way, providing some certainty with regard to tax policy so that they know in 2011 when their tax rates go up, at least for those who pass through income to their individual tax returns, that they're going to have some relief, allowing some relief with regard to capital gains taxes by exempting small business investment, allowing for bonus depreciation so they can write off equipment purchases more quickly, and increasing Section 179 expensing, that deduction that currently exists in the tax code, making that permanent. Those are all steps, small steps, but at least important steps, in my view, that will move this economy forward and do what I think many of us want to see done here, and that is create the conditions in the economic climate where jobs can be created and where we can get people back to work. So we're going to have a vote on this afternoon, Mr. President, and again, my colleagues here who we're debating an underlying bill. It has tax extenders, it has COBRA extension, unemployment benefit extension, all those sorts of things, all of which I understand are important, particularly right now when you've got a lot of people who are out of work. But again, the best remedy that we can offer to the American people is to create jobs and get people back to work. And that will make it less necessary for us to be acting on the legislation that we have to act on today that addresses all the economic dislocation and hurt that the American people are experiencing as a result of this economy. Mr. President, I again would, a year ago when the stimulus bill passed, less than 1% of the money was directed toward small businesses. And we can fix that today with this amendment by directing these tax incentives, using unspent, unobligated stimulus money to do it. So it's all paid for. It's all offset. Doesn't pass debt on to future generations. Doesn't add to the deficit. It's all paid for. It just puts the money where it should have been put in the first place, and directs it in a way that really will be additive toward job creation in this country. And so I ask my colleagues to support this amendment. I think it will be voted on here in a couple of hours, and I yield the floor.